The doctors told me my husband, Liam, might never wake up, and my first instinct was to call my sister, Maya, my rock. It was only when I found the bank statements hidden in his work trips folder that I realized he had been paying for her rock-solid support, and the price was my entire life. It's a strange, hollowed-out feeling, sitting in an ICU waiting room at 3 a.m. a week after your life has been detonated. The world shrinks to the cracked vinyl of the chair you're stuck to, the incessant, sterile hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, and the acrid smell of burnt coffee that does nothing to mask the underlying scent of antiseptic. This had become my new reality. My husband, Liam, my brilliant, charming, force of nature husband of 6 years, lay motionless in a room just down the hall. A still, pale figure in a terrifying landscape of beeping machines and transparent tubes. A single car accident, the state trooper had said with practiced sympathy. Black ice on a lonely stretch of I-81 on his way to a business conference in Syracuse. A freak accident. A tragedy. My sister, Maya, had been my anchor in the storm. From the moment I made that first frantic, screaming phone call from the emergency room, she was there. She held my hand, her grip the only thing keeping me from floating away. She forced lukewarm soup into my mouth when I hadn't eaten for 2 days. She was the one who packed a bag for me and moved me into her spare bedroom, a room with a window overlooking the city lights. "You can't be alone right now, Liv," she'd whispered, her arms wrapped around me. "We'll get through this. Together." And I'd leaned on her, letting her take the weight I could no longer carry. Maya, my wild-hearted, impulsive, and fiercely loyal younger sister. I'd spent our entire lives being the responsible one. I was the one who made sure her homework was done, who covered for her when she snuck out, who proudly sat in the front row at her art school graduation, blinking back tears. She was my person, the fixed point in my universe. In the total wreckage of my life, clinging to her felt as natural as breathing. The days bled into one another, a monotonous blur of hushed, circular conversations with doctors. They spoke a language of detached caution, traumatic brain injury, medically induced coma, monitoring the intracranial pressure. Their prognoses swung between fragile hope and grim reality. All we could do, they said, was wait. But waiting is its own form of active torture. It carves out space in your mind for the worst-case scenarios to build their nests. It was during one of these endless, silent afternoons that the practicalities of the world outside the hospital began to intrude. The hospital's billing department, their voices dripping with a practiced, gentle firmness, had started calling. I needed Liam's insurance information, his social security number, documents I'd never had to think about because Liam handled all of it. He was the finance guy, the one who managed our accounts with a confident flourish while I, an elementary school teacher, was just happy our mortgage was paid on time. "I have to go back to the apartment," I told Maya. We were sitting in her living room, a space I'd always admired. It was a chic, minimalist condo in a trendy downtown building, filled with abstract art and designer furniture. I'd always teased her about how a struggling artist could afford such a place, and she'd always just winked and said, "I have generous patrons." "I'll come with you," she said instantly, already reaching for her purse. "No," I said, a little too quickly. I think I need to do this alone." The apartment felt like a mausoleum, a time capsule of a life that was no longer mine. Walking back into it felt like a pilgrimage I had to make by myself. The thought of her well-meaning sympathy echoing off our walls felt unbearable. The silence that greeted me as I unlocked our front door was absolute. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket where laughter and the sound of the TV used to be. Liam's running shoes were still by the door, caked with dried mud from our last hike together. A half-empty mug of coffee sat on his desk, a fine layer of dust already settling on its surface. The air was thick with his scent, a mix of the ridiculously expensive Italian cologne I bought him every Christmas and the comforting, papery smell of his books. A wave of grief so powerful it felt like a physical blow slammed into me, buckling my knees. I slid down the wall and finally let out the guttural, animalistic sob I'd been holding back for a week. After a few minutes, I pulled myself together and went into his home office. This was his domain, the place where he charmed clients and closed deals, his voice a smooth, confident purr over the phone. He was a master salesman, ambitious and driven. He'd always said he was building an empire for us. I started with the obvious places. The big metal filing cabinet was organized with an almost obsessive precision: mortgage, taxes, car loans. But no folder for insurance. I tore through his desk drawers, finding only office supplies and old performance reviews. Nothing. Defeated, I sank into his worn leather desk chair and powered on his laptop. He had to have digital copies. His password was my birthday, 1004. A small, intimate detail that sent a fresh pang of sorrow through my chest. His desktop was as organized as the filing cabinet. Folders for clients, sales reports, personal. My eyes scanned the screen, and then I saw it, tucked away in the bottom right corner, almost as if to be overlooked. A folder named Work Trips. Of course. He traveled for work constantly, at least 2 or 3 times a month. I clicked it open, expecting to find PDFs of flight confirmations and hotel reservations. Instead, I found a single file, a password-protected Excel spreadsheet. A little odd, but Liam was meticulous about security. I typed in our anniversary, 0612. Incorrect password. I tried his mother's birthday, our dog's name, password. Nothing. On a frustrated whim, a random thought born of desperation, I typed in my sister's name: Maya. Access granted. A cold, sharp shock jolted through me. Why on earth would Maya's name be the password to his work folder? It made no sense. The spreadsheet opened. It wasn't an itinerary. It was a ledger, a detailed financial record stretching back 5 years. Columns for date, description, and amount. The first few entries were cryptic and enormous. October 12, 2020 initial capital investment $50,000. November 5, 2020 furnishings and fixtures $15,000. January 22, 2021 business seed loan unsecured $100,000. March 10, 2021 rent subsidy recurring $4,200. My mind spun, trying to make sense of it. The sums were staggering. Who was he giving all this money to? My first thought was blackmail. Or maybe a secret gambling addiction he'd been hiding. I scrolled down, my heart beginning to hammer against my ribs. The descriptions became more specific, and the cold dread in my stomach began to crystallize into something sharp and terrifying. June 5, 2022 gallery lease downtown Arts District $10,000. August 19, 2022 creative inspiration trip, Bali $12,500. September 3, 2022 equipment, kiln and pottery wheels $7,800. December 1, 2023 birthday gift, Chanel Classic Flap $8,000. February 14, 2024 monthly condo fees recurring $1,200. An art gallery. A trip to Bali. A Chanel handbag. The condo fees. The world tilted. Maya had opened her small but prestigious art gallery downtown 2 years ago. She'd told me she'd won a substantial but anonymous emerging artist grant. She'd spent a month in Bali last summer on what she called a life-changing, soul-searching trip, posting breathtaking photos of sunsets and temples to her Instagram. For her last birthday, she had shown up to dinner swinging a brand new Chanel bag, laughing it off as a miraculous find at a high-end consignment shop. The condo fees. They were an exact match for the monthly fees in her building. No, it couldn't be. My brain screamed in protest, desperately trying to find another explanation. A coincidence. A misunderstanding. My hands were trembling so violently I could barely control the mouse. I opened a new browser tab and logged into our main savings account, the one I rarely ever checked because Liam had always told me, "Don't you worry your pretty little head about it, babe. I've got us." The casual condescension of that phrase, which I'd once found endearing, now felt like a slap in the face. My naivete, my trust, felt like the stupidest thing in the world. I started cross-referencing the dates. October 12, 2020, a wire transfer for $50,000 to a holding company I'd never heard of. January 22, 2021, a certified check for $100,000 made out to the same company. And so it went, line by devastating line. Every large withdrawal from our savings money I thought was going toward a down payment on a house in the suburbs matched an entry in Liam's secret ledger. He hadn't just been helping her out. He had single-handedly bankrolled her entire adult life. Her business, her apartment, her luxury vacations, her designer wardrobe, all of it was a lie, a carefully constructed facade funded by my husband, using our money. My money. The money I earned teaching 31st graders how to read. The money I carefully budgeted every month. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, it was like a physical acid eating its way through my insides. Maya had sat across from me at countless dinners, her face a mask of sisterly concern, as I talked about scrimping and saving, about picking up extra tutoring sessions to help us get ahead. She'd listened, nodded sympathetically, all while living a life that I was unknowingly paying for. I felt a guttural sob rising in my throat as I scrolled to the very bottom of the spreadsheet. There was a final section with a different heading. Project, the escape plan. My blood turned to ice. Below the heading were several bullet points, a cold, clinical checklist for obliterating a life. Phase 1, secure new identities and passports completed. Documents held in safety deposit box, First National Bank. Phase 2, liquidate remaining joint assets and convert to crypto in progress. Target, $250,000. Phase 3, final business trip. Destination, Costa Rica. Date of departure, March 15th. Objective, stage fatal boating accident during offshore fishing excursion. Reconvene with M in San Jose 1 week later. Begin anew. March 15th. The day after his accident. The business conference in Syracuse was a lie. It was all a lie. He wasn't going to a meeting. He was going to disappear off the face of the earth. He was going to fake his own death, leave me a grieving widow saddled with debt and unanswered questions, and run away. And the M he was going to reconvene with in San Jose. It could only be Maya. This wasn't just about money. It was so much bigger, so much darker than that. This was a conspiracy between the two people I loved most in the world to erase me from their lives in the most brutal way imaginable. The car accident wasn't a tragedy that ruined their plan. It was just a cosmic joke, a sick, ironic twist of fate that had paused their getaway. I stumbled out of the apartment, blind to the world around me. I drove back to Maya's condo on autopilot, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were bone white. The entire drive, my mind was a slideshow of tainted memories. Liam whispering "I love you" before a business trip. Maya hugging me and telling me I deserved the world. Every moment of the last 5 years was a lie. When I walked through her door, she was in the kitchen humming along to some sad, indie song on the radio while she chopped vegetables for a salad. She was wearing a pair of silk pajamas I now recognized I had paid for. The casual domesticity of the scene was so grotesquely normal it made me want to vomit. "Hey, you're back," she said, her smile bright and full of a concern that was pure performance. "Did you find the papers? You look like you've seen a ghost." The sheer, unmitigated gall of her. To stand there, pretending, after everything. I couldn't form words. My body moved with a will of its own. I walked over to the sleek, granite kitchen island, an island I had probably bought, and set the laptop down. I opened it and turned it to face her, the glowing spreadsheet of their deceit illuminating her horrified face. She went through a full spectrum of emotion in about 5 seconds: confusion, curiosity, dawning recognition, and finally, pure, unadulterated panic. The color drained from her face, leaving it a waxy, pale shade. The knife she was holding clattered onto the cutting board. Olivia, live, I can explain, she whispered, her voice a strangled thread of sound. Explain? The word came out as a low, dangerous growl that I didn't recognize as my own. Explain what, Maya? Where do you want to start? Should we start with the 5 years of lies? The hundreds of thousands of dollars stolen from our savings account? Or do you want to skip ahead to the grand finale? The part where you and my husband fake his death and run away to Costa Rica with what's left of my life. Each word was a bullet, and I could see them landing. She flinched, physically recoiling. It wasn't like that, she pleaded. Wasn't it? I let out a bark of laughter, a raw, hideous sound. Then enlightened me. What was it like? Was it fun? Did you two have a good laugh? Watching me grade papers and pack my own lunch to save money while you were buying Chanel and flying first class on my dime. No, of course not. The tears started then, thick and dramatic, but I felt nothing but a cold, hard emptiness. My well of sympathy had been poisoned at the source. Liam, he was just helping me. He loved me, Olivia. The words hung in the air between us, sucking all the oxygen from the room. It was the one piece of the puzzle the ledger couldn't spell out, the final, devastating truth that I hadn't let myself fully process. This wasn't just a financial arrangement. He loved you, I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. And May, his wife, the woman who has spent every second of the last week in a hospital praying for him to open his eyes. What was I in this whole equation? Just the bank? It was complicated, she sobbed, collapsing against the counter. He wasn't happy. He said he felt trapped with you. Trapped? I shrieked, the rage finally erupting, hot and volcanic. He felt trapped? He built the cage himself. He lined it with my trust and my future, and he was just going to slip out the back door while I wasn't looking. And you were going to hold the goddamn door open for him and then come to my house with a casserole dish and pretend to be my grieving sister-in-law. I was pacing her kitchen like a caged animal, my mind a vortex of fury and pain. Every shared secret, every sisterly bond we'd ever had, was a lie. What was the plan for me, Maya? I asked, my voice dropping to an icy calm that was more terrifying than the shouting. After the boating accident? Were you going to be my shoulder to cry on? Were you going to help me pick out a casket? Was that part of the fun for you too? She couldn't answer, just shook her head, her face buried in her hands. She was pathetic. A parasite dressed in designer clothes. Get out, I said. The words were quiet, but they had the finality of a slamming cell door. What? Live, please. This is my home. A home you didn't pay for, I retorted, my voice flat and dead. You have 1 hour. Pack a bag with whatever you can carry and get out. I'll deal with liquidating all of this later, but you will not spend another second living in the life you stole from me. She stared at me, her eyes wide with a terror I'd never seen before. She was seeing the real me, not the dependable, forgiving, pushover older sister she had counted on for her entire life. To be honest, I was seeing this version of me for the first time, too. She scurried away and came back 20 minutes later with a single suitcase, her face swollen and red. She didn't say another word as the designer condo door clicked shut behind her, leaving me alone in the beautiful, empty monument to my own stupidity. I didn't cry. I was far beyond tears. I was in a place of cold, diamond hard clarity. The next morning, I went to the hospital. I walked into Liam's room and stood by his bedside. He looked so peaceful, the steady, rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor the only sound in the room. There was no sign of the calculating monster from the spreadsheet on his placid face. The doctor found me there, his expression somber. No change in his condition. He started talking gently about long-term prognosis and difficult decisions that might have to be made down the line. Decisions about care, about machines, about whether to let him go. I looked at the man in the bed. My husband, my betrayer, the man who my sister loved. The man who had planned to utterly destroy me and dance away into a new life. And I realized, with a chilling sense of irony, that his grand escape plan had failed, but he was still trapped. Trapped in his own body, in this hospital bed. And now, I was his keeper. I hold all the power. I am his wife. I am his next of kin. I am the one who gets to sign the papers. I am the one who decides if he lives or dies. The doctors will listen to me. His fate, the one he so carefully planned, is now, completely and utterly, in my hands. The lawyer I called this morning is expecting me in an hour. After that, I have to go back to the hospital for the evening vigil. I have to make a choice. Do I honor the vows I made to a man who, for all intents and purposes, no longer exists? Or do I honor the woman he tried to kill and leave behind? What would you do? Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and give this video a like. We appreciate everyone and can't wait to bring more stories your way.